This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Don't be eager to push your work out there too soon.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. And hey there, writers. Thanks for joining us. As this episode is released, it is arguably the most important day of the year, Father's Day. Maybe I'm prejudiced because...
Or maybe it should tie with Mother's Day.
Oh, that's so yesterday. But since I am a daddy to several, I think it's the best day. And I just have to point out, if that weren't enough for you, this is also the day the Tony Awards are going to air. So be sure and support live theater, everyone. Lara, I assume you've picked all your winners, made your predictions. And Jesse, yes. As if this weren't enough, today is also, I looked this up, Picard Day.
Oh, it's Picard Day. Lovely.
So how will you be celebrating Picard Day this year?
I feel like how I always do, which is I make a very large sign for Picard Day. And then I take a picture of it and I put it on Twitter and I tag Patrick Stewart and then I don't get a response. So,
you know what would be even better?
Yes.
You should shave your head as a tribute to Captain Picard.
I should.
I mean, it's not that bad. You get used to it after a while. And
here's the thing.
That might get his attention.
That's true. I do. My head is not perfectly round, so I'd be very curious to see how that. Yeah, like this. It feels like there's a bump here. I guess everyone has this bump, but anyway.
Yeah.
You know what? Like maybe one day I'll just be like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of taking care of this.
Go for it. Well, yeah. Actually, staying bald is about as much trouble, but it's a thought. I mean, you got to do something to really grab Patrick Stewart's attention.
That's right.
I think that would do it.
Yeah.
So, Lara, as I said before, who are you rooting for the Tonys?
Well, the one that I care about most is Gutenberg.
New York recently.
Gutenberg, because we've seen it and it's up for an award. And I still have my little Satan that you got for me when we were there. I love Satan, my sweet little.
Right.
Do you remember? Yes, that was so sweet. If you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like to see that. I don't know.
Sweeney Todd, which you've now seen with 2 casts. Who would you give the Tony to?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I really, really liked. Am I blanking? Oh my
Emily
gosh.
Ashford.
No, the other one.
No, not that one apparently.
No, I am blanking on it. I keep just almost saying it. No. Oh my gosh, you're going to have to cut this so much. Why can't I think of her? Sutton Foster. I thought Sutton Foster did the best Mrs. Lovitz that I've ever seen. I thought she was amazing. And I love Sutton Foster. So I really liked her. I thought it was more nuanced and I saw more motivation behind it. It was a good performance. I really enjoyed her.
Cool. All right, everyone. Our interview today is with Connie Berry, author of a new novel called A Collection of Lies, which is her 5th Kate Hamilton Mysteries. And we're going to talk to her about this book and the series and so much more. But first, the news. I think I joked on the last podcast about how AI and Amazon kept coming up in our news stories. And sure enough, last week we had one of each. Well, this time we have one that combines both because it's basically about Amazon's apparently very successful AI audiobook program. We reported at the time, it was about a year ago, that Amazon announced that they were inviting self-published authors who were putting their books, making them available in the Kindle store to beta test a new tool, which turned out to be using artificial intelligence generated what they called a virtual voice to read audiobooks. Well, since that tool was launched a few months ago, people have really embraced it. There are over 40,000 books on Audible now, marked as having been created with AI, with this virtual voice program, and nobody appears to be shaming them all that much. The books are selling. There are posts online saying they're good. There are authors who are very glad that they saved hundreds or thousands of dollars on, having to pay for narration. On the other hand, there are people who say, well, this is going to make it pretty tough for actual human narrators who might lose work, right? Jesse, I may have asked you this before because we've talked about AI and audiobooks before, and I think you listen to audiobooks. Would you listen to an AI narrated audiobook?
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to judge something before I've actually listened to one. So I don't want to say, no, I'll never listen to an AI generated audiobook. I'm just saying, as an audiobook editor, I don't see how these are good. I don't see where AI is not good at like reading emotion, at dramatic pauses, at names of places that aren't in America. So I worry about, as an audiobook editor, this doesn't affect me that much. Someone still has to edit it. So I would still get paid, theoretically.
But that's how it is now. But surely, eventually, the tech would get good enough that it really could stimulate a human, simulate a human, like Zora on Star Trek Discovery. Come on.
Yeah, that's
she
true.
Talks like a person.
Yeah, but that's like 1,100 years from now. I would say, like, I'm not against this. Like, it sucks. It sucks, people being out of work. But audiobook narration is truly expensive. And if this helps authors make more money off audiobooks, I'm not against it. Without having to listen to one, I just don't feel we're ready for this yet. For like a 300-page AI narrated book, I just feel there's going to be lots of places where they're going to have to fix or tweak. And also, like, whose voices are these? Like, I know they're saying they're generated, but those voices are usually still someone's actual voice that they've used. And so, is that person getting paid?
Probably already has been paid, would be my guess. Lara, how do you feel about it? Would you be willing to do this?
I'm going to come in behind that. We just this past week had Scarlett Johansson angry because her voice, or a very close facsimile of, was being used in a project that she did not approve of. She didn't want her voice being used. So kind of what Jesse was saying, whose voices are these? There's probably been some kind of scraping to create them, which we don't necessarily love. And I'm going to agree with Jesse that I haven't listened to one yet. And so it's difficult to judge completely what I would or wouldn't do without actually listening. But I will say that I was tentatively looking into this as a possibility for something. I haven't done it yet, but I did look at it. I mean, it's catching my attention. As far as putting someone out of work, here's the thing. I think the people who are using this, you mentioned this, you alluded to this, that they were sending invites to people who put their book out there but did not create an audiobook of it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So those people, I mean, we didn't lose anything. Of course, if things continue on and the tide completely turns, I understand that. And I would never want to put my delightful audiobook narrator out of work. I'll continue to go to her as often as I can. But on those projects that she says, I don't think I'm the right voice for this, I either have to go develop another relationship with someone that I trust and like, or I could maybe start looking into these. And for smaller projects, like we've talked about, the money maybe just isn't there to support going another route. And in that case, I'm not taking work away from someone else. I wasn't going to go hire another narrator to begin with. When somebody records their own, is someone saying you're taking work away from another narrator?
They
what
have
about
actually.
Oh, they have actually.
Speaking of somebody who has narrated some of his own audiobooks, I got literally hate bombed when I started it by people who said exactly that. You're taking work away from narrators. And I said, well, one, some people like to hear the author read their own work, even if they aren't the best, most professional narrator out there. And two, it is my book.
Yeah, it's your choice.
That's right. Well, same thing. I've never heard someone argue. Let's say someone makes their own cover, which I would never do nor recommend. Yeah. But let's say someone did it. Does someone clap at them saying, well, you've taken work away from an actual graphic artist? I just think we have to, I don't know. AI right now is a hot topic, and I get it, but I think that this has a lot of aspects to it. But oh my gosh, people can get very worked up on this, over this very, very quickly.
Yes.
We had a very passionate, I've read through a very passionate and inflamed discussion on a Facebook post that was intended to offer knowledge and new information to people so that they knew that this was there and happening. And it was completely, I think, first of all, taken in the wrong way. Putting something out there and saying, let's look at this, let's talk about it, is not the same as saying, I'm supporting this and suggesting everyone do it. And then to have someone come back and just be repeatedly argumentative and negative, almost to the point of hostility, calling someone out and over again. It was too much, but that's social media. I mean, that's social media for you.
Okay, let's move to something that's much more in my wheelhouse, which of course would be murder, but a literary murder, of course, stemming from the Three Body Problem books and television series. So I'm calling this one The Dead Body Problem.
Nice.
Thanks. This is a real life mystery that comes from the Three Body Problem, but it was happening long before production even got way on the show that some of you may have seen on Netflix. For that matter, some of you, like Jesse, read all 3 books in the trilogy, which kind of has 4 books. But anyway, I'm only halfway there, or 2/3 of the way, depending upon whether you count the 4th book. But more importantly, the murder story. So on March 22nd, the day after this adaptation premiered, Zhu Yao, and let me just say in advance, I apologize if I do, and I probably will mispronounce the Asian names. But anyway, he's a lawyer and former gaming company executive, was sentenced to death in China for the murder of his 39-year-old boss, who's named Lin Qi, who is a billionaire, like I said, one of the richest guys in China, and he was poisoned. How did this happen? Well, the billionaire's company had started buying up all the rights to these books we just mentioned, what's called the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, which starts with the Three Body Problem. This guy spent, they've estimated about $150 million trying to secure every possible copyright and license so that he could, anything related to the books, so that he could squarely have the rights and try to sell them. And he died a month later from the poisoning. Shanghai police received a call from the hospital at 5 p.m. on December 17, 2020, reporting that he'd been poisoned probably through the tea. It's called pu'er tea. He was known to drink. And 3 days later, they detained Zhu Yao in accordance with the law and so forth. How did they come to be connected? Lin, the billionaire, had hired Zhu, who is a lawyer, to help out with this Three Body Problem universe. And although we still don't have as many details as we'd like, even though there was a lot of media attention, I mean, this was one of the nation's richest guys being murdered, but a magazine called Caxin reported that Zhu was upset after being demoted. And get this, because he was a huge fan of the American television show Breaking Bad, he built an entire lab to test various poisons that he'd purchased on the dark web.
Wow.
And he eventually used one to take out his boss. Jesse, this is one of our weirder stories, although I'm glad that at least this time it's not the author being the weird person.
I was going to say, like, is he writing a book about how to kill your boss?
Yes. Well, as I mentioned, you've read the books. So did you foresee this development coming along?
No, this story's insane. Like, the amount of work this guy put into poisoning somebody. Like, well, okay, separate from the death part, appreciate the dedication to a craft. All right, like,
right.
But aside from that, like, what? Like, who poisons somebody today, right? I feel poisoning is very like
the
old school.
Fan of Breaking Bad apparently is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I liked the show too, but I never thought about building my own meth lab.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of
poison lab.
Things. Yeah, poison lab. Yeah, yeah. How do you report that on your taxes, right?
Writing a book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's researching poisons for a book. No, this story, like Michelle told me about the story, and she was giving me all the details. I was like, what? Why? I'm confused. Like, it's just like someone who's just clearly unstable, but like unstable enough that they could dedicate an immense amount of brain power to figuring out the right way to poison somebody. Right? It's one of those types of crazy. Yeah, this story's crazy. It's crazy. It's weird that's attached to a book that isn't about murder. Well, I guess not about. No,
not in the main.
Not in the main. Yeah, the characters aren't murdering other characters in this story. Right. There are civilizations murdering other civilizations, but yeah, it's just like it's one of those things where you're like, I don't understand how some people's brains work.
Yeah. Now, Lara, you drink tea regularly.
Every day.
Concern you?
Oh. Well, should I be concerned too? No. Let me just go ahead and put out there.
Let me just poison lab in our home.
State for the record that I am not a billionaire, so I don't really think.
It's very cluttered. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm not a billionaire. I don't think that there's any real rationale for poisoning me. I guess maybe this was more of a revenge plot than anything. Yeah. Hopefully I haven't infuriated anyone to that point. But
has Bill taken out like $1 million life insurance policy for you recently or anything?
Well, Bill, have you?
Yeah.
No.
That's a question for Bill.
All right. Then you're safe.
Now that no, I'm just kidding. All right. Enough of this nonsense. Jesse, cue up some music. Let's talk to Connie Berry. Connie Berry, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Bill and Lara. It's delightful to be here.
Well, we have a traditional first question on this podcast, so here it is. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
That is an easy question because I actually have offered this advice on more than one occasion, and it is take the time to learn your craft. I have seen, I do a lot of reading of unpublished manuscripts, and I do things like Fantasy Agent Project. And what I see a lot for new writers is so many mistakes that are so easily fixed.
Right.
And the reason they make them is they don't know that they're mistakes. And so I would just say, don't be eager to push your work out there too soon.
Right.
Take the time to take classes. There are many wonderful books. How to Murder Your Manuscript is one of my favorites. It just is very basic, but take that time because it's going to pay off. I have a master's degree in English. I've studied the English novel.
Me too.
I've read tons of books, and I thought, okay, I can do this. I know how to do this. I didn't know how to do it. Right. I didn't know what I didn't know, and my path to publication was longer than it needed to be because I knew enough to know that it wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I just didn't know why.
That still puts you ahead of a lot of people, though.
Well,
at least you were aware.
People kept saying, just put it out there, just query. And I kept saying, no, it's not ready. So I just said, just tell me what I'm doing wrong and I'll change it. And then I realized it wasn't anyone else's responsibility to tell me what was wrong. I had to do my due diligence and learn. And once I did, then I was able to see it. So that would be my number one top piece of advice for new writers.
Well, that's a good one.
That's
and of course, we love it.
Excellent piece of advice. And I'll say we have this in common. When I finished my first manuscript, I had the exact same reaction. It isn't right. It isn't ready. Something isn't right yet. And I didn't know what to do. So like you, I had to go out and learn the craft.
Oh, interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that's why we host WriterCon and its related programs.
We do a conference and the retreat. Yeah.
Purpose of getting not just information about craft, although I think that is most important, but also publishing and marketing and all the things you need to have a grip on in today's constantly changing publishing world, right?
Oh, there's so much to know. There's so much to learn. And the learning curve is very steep. And I'm actually surprised that so many manuscripts are out there, because there are so many writers who get discouraged and don't follow through because they're not willing to persevere.
Right. Well, that is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perseverance. Talent, good to have, not that uncommon, but perseverance, that is uncommon. And I'm with you. I think it's the main thing. And you clearly have mastered all of this. So tell us about your new book, A Collection of Lies.
A Collection of Lies is the fifth book in the Kate Hamilton mystery series. And my protagonist is an American antique dealer, not unlike the life that I grew up in. And she is a mid-40s widow. But she's in the UK now. So I wanted the whole series to be in the UK, but I have my American protagonist who is slowly learning the ways of the UK, and she is beginning to change her language. But she works with a very interesting man called Ivor Tweedy and his antiquities business called the Cabinet of Curiosities, and that gets her into all kinds of issues with crimes. The police often now use her as an expert because of her expertise in antiques, antiquities, and appraisals. And she is now in this book. I guess this is a spoiler because it's coming out very soon, but she is now married to her detective inspector husband, who is now Detective Chief Inspector Tom Mallory. And he probably shares with her a little more than he should. So we'll see if that gets him into trouble.
Yeah. Just to make it clear for listeners who may be listening to this the second it's released on June 16th, your book comes out in 2 days. So if you're listening to this on June 18th or available or later, it's out now, right?
Yeah. Actually, it comes out on the 18th of June.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was intrigued to see that your main character, Kate, is an antiques dealer. You were talking about that. What prompted you? What you just said it was kind of based on your own history. Can you talk to that a little bit more? I'm very interested in how so you're pulling from real life experiences to
yes,
character.
I am. And they tell people write what you know. Mm-hmm. I don't really agree with that always. Obviously, crime writers don't have to be criminals. And, a lot of times we write about things that just fascinate us. So I don't think you have to write what you know. But in my case, I actually do know the antiques trade because that's how I grew up. My parents my dad was an engineer, but he also was an antiques dealer. And they had a shop, and I worked in the shop, and I went to the auctions, and every vacation we ever took was a thinly disguised buying trip. So we spent a lot of time in antique shops. And so that's the world that I grew up in. And I heard a lot of stories about interesting things because the antiques dealer group is a very gossipy group, and there's always a lot of tittle tattle going on behind the scenes. But really deeper than that, I am really interested in history and the past and the impact of the past upon the present. And so I think that the antiques trade is a really good way to be used almost as a metaphor, because antiques are a little bit like time travelers. They are objects of the past that have survived into the present, and they all have a story. My mom was wonderful at finding out all kinds of information about objects, and she would say, for example, well, I can tell my customers what this object is, who owned it, why they owned it, when they got it, when they sold it, because then they're not just buying an object, they're buying a piece of history. And so it's really the historical angle that fascinates me, looking back into the past and finding out why people do what they do today based on what happened in their life and in the lives of their family members in the past.
That is fascinating. And you mentioned that she's now married to the detective inspector. Is that something you did for the purpose of the plot? Is there more to it than that? Kind of, what was the angle there?
I like the idea that she's an amateur. She doesn't have, she can't, she can't question people. She can't arrest people or charge people, or she has no authority. And yet she oftentimes, when crimes are involved, there's policing going on in the background. So this gives her a little in there to find out kind of more than the ordinary person would find out about what's going on.
Nice.
And this is your 5th Kate Hamilton mystery, right?
Yes.
Which is a pretty good run. How much longer do you think this antique dealer can go on solving murder mysteries?
Well, are you talking about as far as I'm concerned? She can go on for a long time as far as I'm concerned, because she is now in the current book, she would love for her husband to actually retire from policing because of the danger. And he has an opportunity to go with a private investigations firm based in Toronto. And so on their honeymoon, she talks him into taking a little commission just to see how it is. And they're honeymooning in Devon, and they are asked to authenticate a Victorian dress supposedly owned by a lace maker that is totally covered in blood. The lace maker was suspected of having committed a murder, been involved in some kind of a crime, but she would never speak of it. She never did till the day she died, and no body was ever found, either human or animal, so they had to drop the case. But this dress is going to be the centerpiece of a new exhibit called Famous Crimes in Devon's History. So as they get into the authentication of this dress together, some other things happen.
Well, isn't that always the way? I mean,
it is. It's never easy.
Otherwise, there would be no book. Hey,
there's no story.
Your PR materials call you a dedicated Anglophile, which I'm going to guess is why this series is set in England. Am I right?
Yes, I am, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I had Scottish grandparents, so I also grew up who emigrated as adults, and they really brought Scotland with them. They really never left. They just relocated, but they brought the country with them. And so I got a chance to kind of experience what it would be like to live in Scotland. And for them, everything British was good, everything Scottish was best. And so I had that as a background. But then during college, I went to school at St. Clair's College, Oxford, for a while, and that's where I really fell in love with the British Isles, and we travel there a lot. So we are headed there in October again. I'm very excited about that. But I just, and then I majored in English literature and loved English history. And that's just what I love. So if you're going to write a book, you're going to spend a long time in that setting with those people. And I got really good advice when I did my master's thesis. My advisor said, choose something that you really love because of that, because you're going to spend a lot of time there. And so writing a book series, I thought, that's where I want to spend time, virtually, in my mind.
I totally get that. I did a summer at Queen's College at Oxford.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Many years ago.
Yeah, many years ago,
it was
exactly.
A great experience.
Yeah.
Hey, I also read that your original plan was to become an archaeologist. True? No, yes, archaeologist, right?
Yes. Well, I did my 5th grade career project on being an archaeologist, and my dad, who the antiques dealer, he was fascinated with Egyptology. Is coming out of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, and then we went to see the exhibit when it was in New York City. And he always wanted to do that and told me the story. And he was a wonderful storyteller. And when he told me the story of Howard Carter looking in, and Lord Carnarvon says, "What can you see?" And he says, "Wonderful things." Right. And my father was fascinated with it, and it just lit a fire within me. And I thought how wonderful it would be to do that. But then I realized that most of the work is happens in hot climates, and you're digging through and sifting through sand and dirt.
Dirty
and I thought, it's not all glamour. So I switched.
Yeah. I think
very cool. Wow. We've seen a lot of those antiquities. We went to Egypt.
In Egypt about a year and a half ago, and went to the.
Oh, did you? Yeah, we were there a while back. Amazing that that those things have survived. And again, that's what fires my imagination. Things that survive from a lost era, and you can touch that era a little bit through those objects.
I actually teared up when we were walking into, what was it, Ramses' tomb? It's just incredible to me. You get past a certain point, and it's the original paint. I mean, it's the way they left it all those thousands of years ago. I was just awestruck. I teared up. It was just amazing.
Oh, I get that.
You kind of mentioned, you talked about your path to publication a little bit. Said it was longer than it needed to be because you took your time. What happened once you had that manuscript prepared and ready to go? So you went back, you learned the craft, you rewrote it. What happened?
Well, it was 2016. I retired from teaching, and I decided now or never. So I thought I would go full time on this. And I had been learning things, and I had also been given some advice by published authors that were friends of mine and that I respected. But I was very reluctant to change my manuscript, but I decided, okay, I'm going to. And I changed that thing in every way you could possibly imagine. I went from multiple points of view to single point of view narrator. I took out characters. I had to add some in. I took out whole storylines, added. I mean, I just thought I'm going to start, and I will see where it goes. And the minute that I went to the first person narrator, one of the things people had said to me was, we can't really hear Kate's voice. And I was trying to think, well, how do I do that? I mean, it is her voice. I've got her dialogue there. But as soon as I went to the first person, she actually came alive for me.
Nice.
And so I did this massive revision. I finished around Christmas time in 2000. I may be getting my time mixed up, but around 2018, possibly. In February of that next year, I went to a conference in Florida called Sleuth Fest. And I had a chance to pitch to one of the editors at Crooked Lane Books that was kind of on my radar. And we had a chance to meet, and she said, because I had actually given her the first chapter of my second book, because I'd started into the second book. And she said, "Oh, I love this." She said, "I love your character. I love the setting." And I honestly I think I was speechless. I think my mouth dropped open. I just like, am I dreaming? Is it, and she said, but this isn't the first book, right? And I said, no. She said, well, you didn't self-publish the first one, did you? And I said, no. She said, you didn't publish with someone else, did you? And I said, no. She said, okay, send me the whole first book. And I went right up to my hotel room and sent it to her. And then I'm thinking, well, she's going to come back and say, well, thank you so much. This is lovely, but it's really not quite for us. But she didn't. She didn't. She just said, but, we love it. My whole team loves it. And we'd like to offer you a 2-book contract. And I was in shock, complete shock. Yeah. But that's, nice. And so they both came out. Actually, books 1 and 2 both came out in 2019, which I wouldn't recommend.
A lot of work.
No, because I wish I had lobbied for 2019 and 2020. I didn't have a book come out in 2020. Mm-hmm. So a debut novel always gets more attention. So I think my second book got overshadowed. And then when you're up for awards and so forth, which I was up for an award with my first book, a couple of them, I was competing against myself. So I just thought, if I could go back, I would do it differently. But actually, I'm just delighted that both books are out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and now your 5th book is right. About to release as well. So that's fantastic. Here you are 5 books in. Terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does your typical writing day look like for you? Can you talk about your process for us a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Well, I could lie and tell you I was really disciplined and then I get up every day and have breakfast and write until 1 o'clock, but that would not be true. I am very undisciplined and I write when I feel like it. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes when I do write, I write for longer periods of time. Someday I would love to be really disciplined and maybe I will get there. I don't know, but I do better under pressure when I have a deadline. When I have a lot going on, I get more done than when I don't. Sure. So I'm not a role model.
Well, except for the fact that you published 5 books.
Yes. And honestly, I appreciate your honesty because every person is different. And I think that it's important that our listeners hear that there is more than one way. I've had people approach me who think there's only one way and say, well, I can't be a writer because I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. I won't work well then. I can't. And so when someone has told them that's the only way to do it, you've got to get up at 5 a.m. You've got to spend 6 hours writing. You have to this, you have to that. I think it's very important for people to hear that the best way is the way that works for you. And you found the way that works for you. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I agree with that.
Hey, one last question, Connie, if I may. What's going to happen next? What are you working on?
I am working on another Kate book. So we'll see how that goes. And I am also working on an historical. And my goal would be to finish 2 books this year. I probably won't achieve that, but that's my goal.
But at least you've set the goal, right?
Yeah.
And this is something outside of the series, a separate book?
This would be totally outside of the series.
And not a mystery or yes, mystery?
It is a mystery. I don't want to say too much about it. But when I get to a certain point, my agent will start to pitch it.
Well, maybe we can have you back.
So exciting. Yeah.
Connie, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Just a few parting words. We are just a few weeks away as we record and issue this from the WriterCon Retreat. Last year, we did this retreat at Branson. That was fun, Lara. Remember that retreat?
Absolutely.
Now we're getting way more upscale at the luxurious Canebrake Resort, but what were your favorite parts last year? Do you have any, favorite stories or
from Branson
moments? Yeah.
Well, I did really like that ice cream place that we went that had chocolate rocks for me to put on it. Oh, but you probably mean the retreat. I had a great group.
You might.
I had a great group at the retreat last year. So when we broke into our small groups, we had a very supportive group, really, really excited to work on those novels. I can think of two who've gone on to see their work published since then. Someone else who won an award with what she was working on at the retreat. And then someone else just announced that she has signed a publishing contract. So that is...
yeah, not bad.
At least half of my group right there. So one retreat with us and look at them go. So that's, I think, pretty telling about what you can expect here. That one-on-one attention to your manuscript, feedback from all the people in your small group, daily instruction, the chance to talk to people who've probably been through whatever you're dealing with and can answer, probably between the two of us, just about any question that you might have. This is a really intensive but wonderful experience. And I'm very excited. As much as I enjoyed that ice cream in Branson and all the stuff there was to do, I'm really excited that we're going someplace this year where I feel like we won't have as many distractions. You may have to come drag me out of the spa a time or two.
No.
I'm hoping that there's going to be daily massage, but there's spas for relaxing. Hey, I've had ideas for my novels in the middle of spas in massages before, because you just get so relaxed and your mind can kind of let go of things. Absolutely. I've seen pictures. There's a pool. There's hiking. I hope there's a hot tub. We haven't been there yet, but I'm hoping that there's going to be a hot tub. I'm really looking forward to just taking a deep breath.
And there's writing stuff. And there's writing stuff.
Yeah. Of course. I'm excited to see who I get to work with this year. And it'll be interesting to see who might get the next publishing deal after a retreat.
So if you'd like more information about that, please go visit the WriterCon website, writercon.com, and then click on the tab that says Retreat. Let me also remind you that my new novel can now be ordered. It's the 8th in the Daniel Pike series called Justice for All. This is the cage match between Daniel and the lead series character from my Splitsville books. So they've got this courtroom cage match as part of the Bernhardt shared universe, where all the characters mingle. It's
super fun. You will not see the twists coming at you. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, honey. You see why we get along so well. All right. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.